Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Credential Up Houston. My name is Margaret Foote Fisher. Our topic today is 21st century education. This is a topic that concerns all of us for a variety of reasons. For example, can new skills come fast enough to outpace the machines? Our specific focus today is on faculty and student success. How are faculty and staff navigating the rapidly changing demands of the 21st century to educate and train more students for life and work in the next decade? Well, we will explore that topic to find out what some post-secondary educational institutions are doing and responses from faculty who are on the front line. So joining us today are Dr. Angela Hill, Dean of Student Success, Teaching and Learning Center, Lamar Institute of Technology, where Dr. Lonnie Howard is the president. Dr. Brian Boyd Baldwin, Senior Instructional Technology Consultant at Texas A&M University, where John Sharp is the system chancellor. Mr. Darin Baskin, president of the Houston Community College Faculty Association, where Dr. Cesar Maldonado is chancellor. Thank you all so very much for joining us. We're really delighted that you're here. And we're delighted also with the great studio audience that we have. Many of our audience members are from the Lamar Institute of Technology, with Dr. Howard joining us, and also from our HCC online college. So we're delighted they're all here to participate in the discussion that we will have today. So as we turn our attention to the primary focus on automation and what that means for all of us, how can we train enough individuals fast enough to outpace the machines? Dr. Hill, let's go to you first. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts as far as us making training more accessible, affordable in the two-year community colleges. One thing that we also have growing and thriving at Lamar Institute of Technology is now we have tapped into the high schools, where we have 2 early college high schools, where these students will be able to graduate not only with a high school diploma, but also an associate's degree, where they're ready for work. And so with that, as we make more things accessible, affordable, and educate the community, it will give us an opportunity to get them ready for the workforce.
And that is very important. And so we learn from each other, right? And that's what educational institutions do, is they develop best practices, and then they are able to share them across the board with sister institutions. So what about Texas A&M University, Dr. Baldwin?
We have some great things happening at Texas A&M right now. Started off a few years ago with our Zachary building. We have a partnership with HCC, which is a part of our engineering program. The Zachary building and infrastructure there supports that program, where an HCC student can do their first year at HCC Spring Branch campus, and they are accepted. They will get a place at the A&M in one of the online or in one of the engineering programs. Within that, it's an active learning environment completely. So it's immersive with technology. It's not something where they're racing against the machines. They're including the machines, and they're finding ways to communicate between learner content, and learner-instructor in a new variety of ways that mimic the real world.
So fascinating. So those partnerships are critically important,
Absolutely.
as you referenced. So as we go to HCC, Faculty Association President, you're well aware of all of the initiatives as well at HCC. So Mr. Baskin, tell us what HCC is doing.
Well, I don't think that we're ever going to be able to outpace the machines. I think it's best that we keep up with the new technologies and be abreast to what they are, so that we can maintain at least a level of understanding within the technology. HCC is doing great things. We've started to do real-life simulations in the classrooms with technology, including the technology, not running away from it. We're also using smart boards in the classrooms. We have the new buildings that are coming up are more of the 21st century type of technology-based buildings, where the students are going to have more interaction with technologies. So I think we're moving in the right direction. We'll never be able to outpace the machines, but we can keep up with them.
I think that's a great point that you make about keeping up with them. There is such an uncertain future, really, that we face with respect to technology. We really don't know what's on the next horizon, as it were. So as we look at the masses of people within all of the service areas that are in need of education and training, how do you gear up fast enough? The activities that you mentioned, the initiatives, are all excellent. But how do you reach out to that population in need to ensure that persons from no education whatsoever going into ultimately a certificate or degree are also attended to in this process. Dr. Hill?
So what we do at Lamar Institute of Technology is what it sounds like to me is more of recruitment, right? How do we get the word out? How do we get our brand and our community members knowing all the advantages they can have in obtaining a degree? And what we do right there, it's a full team effort. It takes all of stakeholders, internal and external. And what we do is get out into the community. We're into, like I said, the ISDs. We also have external partnerships with industry. We have advisory committees that advise our faculty and staff and programs exactly what type of programs that we should have offered, what type of skills are needed directly for the workforce for our students. So I think it's more of like a give-give, if you will. Not only do we have something to offer, but we're learning from our community and the business and the industry that we're trying to fulfill with job opportunities.
So how do the faculty members respond? We're talking about training, faculty as well, to be abreast of all of the technology so that we can keep students abreast of what the 21st century, next decade is going to be focusing on. So let's go to you, Dr. Baldwin, and then we'll go to Mr. Baskin to hear comments on that.
Well, the technology that came around, you're going back 20 years thinking about the way instructional technology came out. And a lot of times it came out with a negative connotation because it was forced. As it went on, it became more ingrained and more immersive with the learning experience. So the technology itself has changed. The professors have not so much. Those of us that graduated college back in the 90s, all our courses were lecture. You had 45 hours of lecture and you got a 3-hour credit. Now somebody coming in from high school today probably has never been in a lecture. So those types of things you have to get into the act of learning where you're actually mimicking and creating something and developing and getting past that application level of just listen and try to understand. Because those of us that were really good at lecture all went on to grad school and became professors.
Right.
And we turn around and keep doing that. So we have to get out of that loop and provide those opportunities for students that are not in that group.
Okay, very, very good. So we're going to continue this discussion, and I'd like to hear from Mr. Baskin when we return, because one of the things that you mentioned earlier was that the faculty members are indeed coming around. They're interested, but a lot of it has to do with training the faculty and changing the mindset. So we'll talk about that when we come back, and we hope that you'll stay with us for this conversation.
HCC's online college is officially open. This not only means online classes, but also online degrees and certificates. You can now credential up anytime, anywhere. Join the fast-growing number of students getting their full college education from anywhere they use a laptop. HCC currently offers 32 fully online degrees and will offer 71 next year. You no longer have to find a way or time to get to college. HCC brings college to you.
Welcome back to Credential Up Houston. We are delighted that you are still with us because this is a very important topic that we are discussing today pertaining to faculty and student learning in the 21st century. Prior to going to break, we talked about changing the mindset because we're looking at how technology is so rapidly advancing and how do we either keep up with the pace of or outpace technology. So Dr. Baldwin, during the last segment, you made reference to some of the initiatives underway at Texas A&M University. So I'm going to come back to you in just a few minutes because you made reference to the training that you have to change the mindset of the faculty and to inspire them. Dr. Hill, you made reference to the same and all of the initiatives that you have underway. And I'd like to go to Mr. Baskin and ask you, what are some of the initiatives that are underway at the Houston Community College?
Well, we're doing great things at HCC. The training that we have for faculty is probably nationally recognized because what we have started to do, we've started to ensure that all faculty have some form of training as it relates to technology. Whenever a faculty member comes in and they are either hired as full-time or part-time, they're required to go through a 8-week course that requires them to become more engaged and more involved with the technology that HCC offers, to include our platforms for instructional learning. We have also reached out to a lot of the community to see what exactly they need for us as well. So we're moving in the direction of getting everybody prepared for 21st century. We're moving at a readily, steadily pace.
Excellent. And I know that this is an initiative that is underway at your institutions, as I mentioned before. And frankly, this is something that is critically important for all educational institutions to be aware of, because the pace of technology is rapid. And so now what we have to also be cognizant of are the learning styles of students and the teaching styles of faculty in order to be effective. So let's talk about that as it pertains to changing that mindset as well. The teaching style and the learning style. How does a faculty member then embrace the technology in a way that he or she would integrate that into the curriculum in a way that would further advance their teaching style, and provide it in such a way in which the students would also be able to learn from the presentation? Dr. Hill?
So I will share with you, I have over 15 years of education experience, higher ed education experience, but also in that coming from teaching K-12, ISD, and then coming to the classroom and teaching higher ed. So being able to see the students, you know, as they grow. One key point that we have in our teaching and learning center is not just the technology side, but also instructional practices is what you're speaking to. How do you reach the mind, but also not just for one, but all students that's involved? And that takes a lot of training, because we all know that not one person, not two people are the same.
That is.
And so in that, we have to make made available different instructional practices and strategies for our instructors to learn. Also student engagement, communication, learning different platforms of like an LMS, of how you deliver the course, because we know that not all students learn the same. And so just outreaching and giving our faculty that opportunity to learn outside of what their comfort level may be for some, and just showing them what type of learners that's coming in the 21st century, and then what we should be able to adapt our teaching styles to.
And we'll talk about that further in just a moment as well. But Dr. Baldwin, with your experience in instructional design as well, what do you see as being an effective means of integrating all of the various modalities, whether it's for on-class or online students, to ensure that every single student who wishes an education and have access to an education can do that?
Well, it's easier than it's ever been, really, just to be honest with you. We have a very similar experience, K through 12, higher ed, and instructional design work and that type of thing, where at one point the technophobia was just this barrier that you couldn't get through. That's dissipated a lot with a lot of faculty. Students almost it doesn't even exist with them anymore. They just come in ready to go. So when we're dealing with faculty, there's some holdouts, but the people that have tried it, and over the years, even if it's just something like using the Canvas learning management system, little things in there, apply one aspect to your course, flip something, try some new technology. If it doesn't work, it's okay. You just turn and go another direction with it. But once they experience it and they realize that I learned something when I taught middle school, that at the end of the day, all the students had energy, were running everywhere, and the teachers were exhausted walking out to the parking lot. Yeah. And then when we shifted that model and went to an active learning model where the students, they did all of the work, and the instructor really just facilitated, provided the scaffolding, made sure nobody went off the reservation. The dynamic changed.
That's very important.
And that was all through active learning, the use of technology to some degree. And it's really just been beneficial. Students are happier. I've always said it's just mean to put a kid in 3 hours lecture a day for 45 hours.
Yes.
10 hours lecture is great.
Sure.
And I love a good lecture.
Oh,
but,
of course, yes.
You know, we have to look forward to things and the things that they already use in their social lives, we just re-implement in an educational setting.
And so with the instructional side, you teach also, Mr. Baskin. So as you look at the field-dependent and the field-independent students, what do you do in order to ensure that all of them get their needs met educationally as you prepare your syllabus?
So I think it does come down to understanding those preferences that you're referring to, those learning preferences, we have to look at each student as an individual. And we were educated in a time where it was more instructor-centered learning, where everything centered around the instructor. And in this 21st century teaching model, we're going to have to move more towards the student-centered learning, where the students are actually the center point of the classroom. Typically in my classroom, you will see a lot of movement. You will see a lot of collaboration. If you aren't used to student-centered teaching or student-centered learning, if you come into my classroom, you would think everyone in the room had ADHD, because everybody's moving, everybody's doing something, and there's always something going on. As far as a lot of the instructors at HCC, they're trying new things. And so those new things are starting to work more.
And we will talk about some of those new things in just a few minutes, because there are some innovative strategies that should be incorporated into the classroom design. So we'll take a break and we'll be right back, so please stay with us.
I've seen people's lives change just by attending a class at HCC.
Some of them might not have the financial means to go to a four-year university. That doesn't make them any less quote-unquote smart than the kids who go to a four-year school.
HCC is easy to get to. It's easy to apply and easy to become a part of.
It gave me so much confidence.
Once you finish your 2 years there, you can transition into a four-year university or go into the workforce.
It's affordable, it's accessible, it changes lives.
Welcome back to Credential Up Houston. We're so delighted to have our studio audience joining us today. And in the audience is Dr. Lonnie Howard, who is the president of Lamar Institute of Technology. He's here to support Dr. Angela Hill, who is our guest on the program from the Lamar Institute of Technology. And of course, we welcome our online staff as well, who are here in the studio audience to participate in the conversation. And we have Dr. Brian Baldwin from Texas A&M University, where Mr. John Sharp is the chancellor, and Mr. Darin Baskin, who is the president of the HCC Faculty Association, where Dr. Cesar Maldonado is chancellor. So we're delighted that we're having this conversation, because it's really a critical one to have. There are some 21st century learning initiatives that are said to be important to be integrated into the classroom. And so I'd like to talk about some of those initiatives. And the first that they say is really critically important is technology integration. So I'd like to ask you about technology integration, and to address that briefly, Dr. Hill.
So with technology integration, we see now that we want to meet the students where they are on their devices. And with that is, I believe what we spoke about earlier, just having an LMS. At LIT, we have all of our faculty members trained in our Blackboard environment, so that they're all, no matter if it's a face-to-face, a hybrid, or online course, they can have their course live in Blackboard. Additionally, we also offer online instructor certifications. And so I can teach a face-to-face class, but I'm learning all the skills, best practices, instructional practices, and strategies to reach that online learner. And those can be applicable to a face-to-face as well.
Okay, collaborative environment. Dr. Baldwin.
So at A&M, we follow a similar model as to HCC and Lamar, where we have certain certification programs to help instructors come in and work on those collaborative skills. Different technologies, different ways of approaching the classroom, the ways of formatting the facility itself, in which ways, you know, they'll actually be focusing on that learner-learner interactions with the content.
Yes.
And to really drive it home.
So opportunities for creative expression. I think you touched on that. So tell us just a bit more about that, Mr. Baskin.
So that's one of the 4 C's that they say are important in 21st century teaching, which is the creativity component. Instructors are starting to do more creative things in their classrooms, like something as simple as using a smart board in the classroom, or using real-life simulations where the students are actually in the hospital in a simulation. So they see, they hear the sounds, they see the machines, they hear the beeps, and those things are starting to be more incorporated into the classroom.
that would obviously, all of what you're saying would enhance that learning environment and certainly the teaching environment as well. So inquiry-based approach is one that is highlighted as being very important as well. And that, in my estimation, touches on that creative thinking and that critical thinking that is a part of the 21st century learning as well. Let's talk just a bit about that inquiry-based approach. Dr. Hill?
So for us, just having the students be centered in their learning, having instructional practices where they're not given the answer out of a textbook, they have to explore. It may consist of them collaborating with their colleagues or their peers, but just not spoon feeding the instruction, but you're making them use those critical thinking skills as well as application outside of the classroom, because I believe all of us will agree it's not the lecture that teaches the students, it's what they explore outside of the classroom, out of that 3-hour course that they learn on their own is when the learning occurs.
I've heard some students say thinking is hard work. And so now we're looking at justification for answers, and that will cause them to think. So what are your thoughts about that, Dr. Baldwin?
Justification for answers. So that's very abstract. Really, what I would say is, students are coming in an era where the answers are there. There's nothing I don't know that they can't find somewhere online. But that's not learning. That's understanding or remembering. So we have to, whenever we can get them up to that creative level, that's actual demonstrable evidence that they've got it. They're going to be successful in that skill, yes, whatever it is. So that's really the basis of where you want to be. Not everybody can always get there. Sometimes your course only goes up so level and then you have to hand it off to someone else and then you hope they get there. But the creativity level is really where you need to be.
And writing for reflection, Mr. Baskin.
So writing has always been a student's Achilles heel. They tend to not like to write. However, when you allow them to write in smaller pieces and you chunk the writing together, then you tend to get a student who is more engaged in the writing process. What we have started to do at the instructional level is not give them a big writing assignment and say, write this and give it to us in 6 weeks. We give it to them and we have them to chunk it over those 6 weeks, a small piece every week.
Excellent points. Great. Well, we're going to take another break. And when we come back, we're going to go to the studio audience for questions and answers. So stay with us.
We have academic programs that help students get from high school into a university. And the data is very clear that students that take the path of a community college finish in far higher numbers than students that start straight into a university experience. Our students can achieve a baccalaureate degree in multiple fields from the universities in the area without ever leaving Houston Community College.
Welcome back to Credential Up Houston. Now we'll go to Justin Boyd at our studio audience for questions and comments. Justin?
Thank you, Dr. Ford Fisher. I'm here with Paul Calhoun. He's got a question for you.
Inquiry-based learning encourages students to ask questions such as who, what, or why. What kinds of innovative things are faculty members doing to encourage and reward that behavior?
Inquiry-based learning is not a relatively new idea. It is an idea that has been in the classroom for a long period of time. I think the integration of it into the classroom more is more along the lines of what 21st century learning is. And we try not to say or use the word reward when we're talking with students. It's more of an enrichment. So maybe the student can go to a museum and then write a response paper on a museum visit, or even take a topic in the course and do extra research on that topic. So the enrichment in the classroom is more of what the inquiry-based learning and those questions arise from.
Thanks, Dr. Ford. We have another question here from Dr. Lonnie Howard.
Well, actually, it's a comment. And as I think about learning for the 21st century, and perhaps our students keeping pace with the machines, I think what really we need to focus on also is this notion of occupational forecasting. And what that simply says is we work with business industry to really get ahead of what these technologies will be that's perhaps coming down the pipeline.
One of the things you have to keep in mind is we have a nice baseline on technology now. We know pretty much where we're going in the next 10, 15, 20 years, and we can start developing those skills with students as we go. One of the big arguments, though, has been the pace of the technology. We're getting into quantum computing, virtual reality, augmented reality, how to use those things. When in reality, it's really more about the brain. The brain hasn't changed. It'll only process information so quickly. So my thoughts are on that is to let the computers go as fast as they want. We'll use them for services, but the learning experience is what we're really looking at. We have to, the facilitator, the instructor, the professor, whoever it might be, has to manage that and promote the right technologies, the right time in the learning process to really get them up to that creation level again and develop those skills. If you give it too much at a time, they crash. So.
Okay. Interesting comments that are being made here in response to that. Dr. Hill, do you have a comment to make in that regard as well?
Yes, as far as keeping up with the technology, I do agree with my colleagues here that it will be almost impossible to keep up with the technology. But what we can do is just make sure that our students are skilled, that they're adequately prepared to go immediately into the workforce. And that happens with the relationships with the industry, the partners, and the faculty members, that's our instructional leaders. So just make sure that we're on the same page. And that comes along with training and receiving training.
So as we think about modern pedagogy, how important is classroom design for that learning to occur? I think that's a critical question that a lot of the members of the public and instructors as well, professors and institutions are asking. So how important is that for the modern pedagogy?
It's very important. The design of the classroom can also dictate how the flow of the classroom will go. If there's all tables lined up in rows, then students typically are more standoffish. But if you have more circular classrooms where students are able to look at each other and they're able to engage more, that seems to be more of a 21st century classroom.
And that then also helps to promote that collaborative learning environment. This is really very good. So very quickly, let's hear any recommendations that you would like to make. Let's start with Dr. Hill, very briefly, please.
Recommendations for
the 21st century teaching and learning environment.
Yes, just continue the future training. Of course, all the institutions that's seated today on the panel, we have it started, right? And we're on that right path. But the biggest piece is just to continue the focus on faculty and instructional training, also including the ISDs. I can't stress that more enough. We need to be on the same page. And inclusion means that one thing at LIT, we offer free training for our ISD partners, our ECHS teachers, so that we can help combat the college readiness as well as help them become comfortable so when they are in a college setting, they will be equipped to perform.
Excellent. Dr. Baldwin, very quickly.
So the whole idea here is, the advice I'd give an instructor that's thinking about becoming more actively engaged with the technology will be to just simply pick a little section.
Yes.
One assignment, not a whole module, nothing. Just try one thing. Flip it, do something with it, and get it going.
Excellent. Mr. Baskin.
Yes, I would just have to agree with my colleagues. Start small and work your way up.
Well, tremendous panel. This has been a great, great program, and I thank you all so very, very much. Dr. Angela Hill, Lamar Institute of Technology, Dr. Brian Boyd Baldwin, Texas A&M University, Mr. Darin, Baskin, Houston Community College. We appreciate the information, and of course we also appreciate Dr. Howard, the president, being here. We appreciate Chancellor Sharp and Chancellor Maldonado for all of the support that is provided for teaching and learning. And certainly we thank our audience from online who are here today as well, and we thank you in our viewing audience. We ask you to please plan to credential up and join us next time.